The poinsettia flower, also known as the Star of Christmas, is a special symbol of Christmas and New Year in the Western world. It has a rich history dating back to the 16th century in Mexico, where early Christians began using this plant as a festive decoration. Merry Christmas, guys! As you may have already guessed, today we're going to draw a beautiful poinsettia flower. Since it's Christmas time, I think it's a perfect opportunity for us to draw this vibrant and cheerful Christmas symbol together. Our painting will have 3 layers: base layer, definition layer and accent layer. Let's explore each of them in detail. To start with the first layer, we will use a light red color for the leaf. I'm filling one half of the leaf with a light mix of quinacridone red and water, and then the second half while leaving a small white line to separate the 2 parts. To add depth and dimension, I'm applying more saturated pigment along the edges and in the middle along the white line. Since the leaf is closest to us, we can make it appear even closer by adding touches of transparent pyrrole orange. Remember, objects that have colors closer to blue tend to look farther away. That's why I suggest giving the inner red leaves more orange tones, while the outer leaves can have a closer affinity to magenta. Following this approach, I carefully move on to the next leaf, ensuring that it doesn't touch the one I just painted to prevent the colors from bleeding together. As a base color, I mainly use quinacridone red, sometimes adding quinacridone coral and permanent alizarin crimson. As a next step, I want to add veins. On the leaf they should be darker, so I'm using quinacridone magenta. I want to try the wet on damp technique. This is quite a tricky approach because the most important thing here is timing. You need to catch a moment when the paper is not wet already, but at the same time is not dry. It should be damp, so pigment still spreads on paper, but in a more controlled manner. Of course, I missed the timing and I had to rewet my paper a bit. Not perfect, but still a working solution. For the leaves that are farther away and have shadows, I apply more magenta, especially in the shadowed areas. Some leaves may display a combination of red and green hues, so introduce phthalo turquoise to make them more visually captivating. Already at this stage I started feeling that was a mistake. Anyways, I'm continuing with the far magenta leaves and very scented orange leaves. At this moment I started suspecting that my poinsettia flower looks too pinkish. But I was glad to discover that poinsettia flowers can actually come in a variety of colors, including vibrant red, pink, orange, green, creamy green, and even white when kept in dark for a few days. Therefore, my color selection appears reasonable. Now let's paint the lovely green leaves. We'll use a mix of phthalo turquoise and hooker's green. To create shadows, we'll add more phthalo turquoise, while the parts of the leaves that face the light will have more hooker's green. The technique for painting the green leaves is similar to the red leaves. First paint the first half of the leaf, then the second half with a tiny white line in the middle. Add more saturated pigment on the edge and in the shadow areas. Finally, add veins using wet on damp technique. To make it more visually appealing, we can include some red splashes on the edges of a few leaves and where we anticipate the reflection of the red leaves. Moving on to the berries, we'll use permanent alizarin crimson. It's a simple process, just outline the berry and then fill it with color, leaving a small highlight. Next, we'll use pyrrolene violet to draw the branches. Oops, I almost forgot about one green leaf. Let's quickly paint it and then fill the space between the leaves with quinacridone purple. Now let's focus on the pine branches. I really enjoy drawing them because it's super simple. First, start by drawing the branch line and then add the needles with light strokes. To make it look more realistic, it's important to have some needles pointing in different directions instead of lining them up perfectly. For the pigment, I mainly use hooker's green, but sometimes I add a bit more phthalo turquoise to create a cohesive color palette. To make the branches look more realistic, I cover the initial branch line and the base of the needles with pyrrolene violet. To outline the flowers, I use hooker's green and fill them in with the green gold. At this point, the first layer is complete. Now let's add some definition to the leaves. I outline the darker part with more saturated pigment while leaving the brightest parts almost untouched. Speaking about how poinsettia became a Christmas symbol. According to the legend, there was a young Mexican girl named Pepita who was on her way to the nativity scene at her town's chapel. It was customary at that time to bring gifts for Jesus to the church. Unfortunately, Pepita had nothing to offer, and she was very upset about it. However, an angel inspired her to gather roadside weeds and offer them as a bouquet for Jesus. When she placed the bouquet at his feet, the weeds miraculously transformed into vibrant red poinsettia flowers, now known as Flores de Noche Buena, or flowers of the Holy Night. Since then, the colors red and green have been forever associated with Christmas and New Year. I need to accept the fact that my feelings about red-green leaves were right. My attempts to define those leaves led to overwork in the paper. Choosing quinacridone purple for the shadows wasn't the best color choice, or maybe the color saturation was too intense. If I were to do it again, I would use a mix of phthalo turquoise and quinacridone purple and making it much less intense. However, I'm quite happy with the other green leaves. If I were to redo this first green layer, I would make it slightly more intense, and for the shadows I would avoid using pure quinacridone purple. On the final layer, I added lovely accents to the most vibrant parts of the leaves and added subtle shadows to the berries. And voila! Our beautiful poinsettia flower is now complete. I hope this video was helpful for you and that you were able to learn from my mistakes. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comment section down below, and see you in the next videos. Bye!